Notre Dame stomped out Navy 51-14 thanks to count them, six Navy turnovers. But more importantly, that was the most complete performance by the Irish offense all season long, and this team is rolling heading into the bye week. That's all coming right up on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports. And thanks for joining me here on this Monday, October 28th. And thanks for getting your week started right here by making this your first listen of the day. This show is free and available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching along, please like the video below and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're listening to the podcast, please take a quick second, rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and subscribe there as well. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's dive into Notre Dame's 51-14 shellacking of the previously 24th ranked Navy Midshipmen. This game felt like it was over pretty much after the first quarter, and the Irish led by 3 touchdowns for the final 35 minutes of the game. So it was a very impressive performance by the Fighting Irish, and it made for a nice, relaxing afternoon for fans. That is the one nice thing about playing a noon game, is that when you dominate a team like this in the way that Notre Dame did on Saturday, you kind of just get to enjoy the rest of the afternoon. It's very peaceful. It's very relaxing. I had a wedding to go to, so a stress-free Saturday was important for me, and I'm sure a lot of you as well. So it was just a great Saturday for Notre Dame football fans. And with the win, the Irish moved to 7-1 on the season, and they moved from 12th to 8th in the AP poll. It is their first time being back in the top 10 after the loss to NIU in September. And outside of the season opening win against Texas A&M, I believe this was the most impressive win of the season from beginning to end. And today on the show, I'm going to break down why I thought it was so impressive and what it means in the big picture, because this team really is getting hot at the perfect time. And I believe that they're sort of being reintroduced to the national media and a lot of people that just wrote them off after that loss to NIU. So as I started to dig into this game, I felt very confident that Notre Dame would control the game for the most part. I did not think it would be 51-14. I'll give you that. I actually predicted 35-21, but I didn't think the game would be that close. I felt like Notre Dame would be winning 35-14, and then Navy would score a garbage time touchdown late. That did not happen. Notre Dame still has not given up more than 2 touchdowns in a game other than the game against Louisville this year. And in that game, Notre Dame's offense and their special teams basically gifted Louisville 2 touchdowns in that one. So another very good performance by that defense. But let's talk about that offense, because even if Navy did not turn the ball over one time in this game, I still think Notre Dame would have won by at least 3 scores because the Irish played so well in all 3 phases, but specifically on offense. This was the first time really all season long, honestly, where I watched the offense and I thought, okay, that looks like a playoff caliber unit. Because even when Notre Dame was winning big games, the win against Louisville was a very big win because Louisville was ranked in the top 15 and they had the revenge factor from the season prior. Like, the offense looked good early, but then there were so many times in the second half where they were just sputtering and they were making mistakes, and it was sort of the same stuff that we had been seeing all season long, or at least during the first half of the year. So there was all these games where it was just really frustrating. Then they come out of the bye week against Stanford and they looked really good in that game. But then it's like, okay, it's just Stanford. I thought they came out really hot against Georgia Tech, had a sluggish second half, but this was another big step in the right direction. And the defense is playing at a championship level really all season long. The offense has done enough. This was not the case. I actually thought the offense outperformed the defense in this one, and we have not been able to say that. And I think it just shows significant improvement that we've been hearing about since the beginning of the year. Mike Denbrock warned all of us in the beginning of the season, this offense is not going to look the same in Week 13 as it does in Week 0. It's a work in progress, and maybe he undersold it, right? Because the offense was certainly a pretty large work in progress early on in the year, but now they're starting to click, and they got the ball first and drove right down the field for a touchdown. Denbrock's script was absolutely cooking. That pass to Jaden Greathouse on 3rd down set up a touchdown in the opening drive, courtesy of Riley Leonard's legs. And just the fact that they were even passing it to Jaden Greathouse on that 3rd and long was an encouraging sign in the middle of the field, which is not somewhere that Riley Leonard had a ton of success throwing to early on in the season. And then on the second drive of the game, Denbrock schemed up a pass play to Chris Mitchell where I'm pretty sure that I was closer to Chris Mitchell than any other Navy defender, and I was in Louisville for that game. He was so wide open. I'm sure it was a bust, but it was a nice play design. It worked out. And then Jeremiah Love, another big game for him. He eliminated any doubt in this one with the 64-yard touchdown run right after Navy cut the deficit from 14-7. And I just thought Notre Dame, in every facet of the offense, they looked really good, but it starts with the quarterback. That was Riley Leonard's best game of the season, in my opinion. He finished 13-21, 178 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and then he had 10 carries for 83 yards on the ground, plus a rushing touchdown. And it wasn't just that he was running the ball. Notre Dame wasn't running a bunch of designed runs. They weren't running QB power, so he wasn't taking huge hits. A lot of those rushing yards came on scrambles, and he was making the right decision when he scrambled the ball. This wasn't like so many times early on in the year where he would just roll out when he didn't have to if that first read wasn't there, and then he'd just get a few yards. No. He saw an opening, made the play, and you just see when he's got the ball in the open field, he looks like a freight train coming through because he's so big, he's deceivingly fast because it doesn't really look like he's running that hard, but yet he's running by guys, and then he's really hard for guys to bring down. So it was a really good game for him on the ground again, but he looked so confident throwing the ball. He started off 7 of 7. He was stepping up in the pocket. He was rifling the ball downfield. 9 different eligible receivers had a catch in the first half, and he finished 3 of 4 passing on 20 yards or more, including a 37-yard touchdown to Bo Collins. So he was even hitting the deep ball, but his best pass of the day, honestly, was wiped off due to a weak holding penalty on Emil Wagner. We could do a whole segment about the refereeing in this game, and I'm going to talk about the roughing on KVA later, but that was just not a hold on Emil Wagner, and it's such a shame, too, because it was a great throw and catch from Riley Leonard to Jordan Faison. I think it would have been like a 24-yard gain, layered the ball, just a really nice play. And speaking of Jordan Faison, man, welcome back. That was a huge game from him. Led the team with 4 catches, 52 yards. Again, he would have had 20 or more yards if that catch had counted. And I was very impressed with his route running. We heard about his blocking ability, and then you got his dad posting a clip on Twitter of Jordan Faison just getting one-on-one with a cornerback and just pancaking him. But he had a nice catch on 4th down, and it reminded me of this time a couple weeks ago when Mike Denbrock just brought up Jordan Faison unprompted as someone who they needed to get back on offense to be more dynamic because he is such a good playmaker. He's so fast. He's so elusive. And it's not just that he can get open and create separation. It's that once he has the ball in his hands, he can make guys miss and make some big plays. So he was a very key component of the offensive game plan in this one, and you saw why. Really good game from him. And if Faison can play like that, it just gives Notre Dame a different threat outside than they've had all year. Bo Collins didn't have a big sack in, but he had that big catch for a touchdown. Jane Greathouse has been getting more involved. Mitchell Evans has been more involved. But you need the cornerback to be on the same page with all of those people to make this work. And it looks like Riley Leonard is finally on the same page with all of his receivers. I was so impressed with how confident he looked because even when there were times when he'd miss a throw, like he missed a throw on a sideline pass, and then he threw one ball in the end zone that I hope he was throwing it away because he just rifled it. It looks like he was throwing it in the stands. That was a little weird. Again, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in that situation. I think he was throwing it away. And I think I had just texted someone too, like, man, Riley Leonard looks good. And then he did that. But it doesn't matter. He looked way more confident out there. He was finding guys. He was making the right decision on time. And he wasn't just rolling out when he didn't have to. And the coaching staff trusted him on big plays, even though, the stakes weren't that high that often in this game because it was such a blowout from the beginning. But Notre Dame finished 8 of 13 on 3rd downs, and they were not afraid to throw it on 3rd and 4th down either. I thought the fact that they went for it on that 4th and 7 had a great play call, and then that was set up, and then Riley Leonard hit Jordan Faison on that play. Those are the plays that earlier on in the season I would have had zero confidence they were going to convert. But at that point in the game, I was like, yeah, they should go for it because they actually have a legitimate passing game, and Riley Leonard has been making all the right decisions. Let him do it again. And I understand that there are some fans who are still going to be skeptical of Leonard. I get it. You can't really just ignore everything that happened early on this season, but you also cannot ignore the improvements that he has made, especially over the last 3 games. He has been really good lately, and if he continues to improve, this offense just becomes more dynamic, and it is a nightmare to deal with because of the threat of his legs. And then you got a guy like Jeremiah Love, who had a ho-hum 12 carries, 102 rushing yards, and 2 touchdown games. He's so good. And that play he had for a touchdown run, like, it didn't look that great, right? Because he just made one cut and he was gone. But just that move there to get through that hole. And then once he was out there, it was like, yeah, no one's catching him. So he's great. Quiet day for Jadarian Price. He only played 19 snaps in this one, had 5 carries for 19 yards. But then you got Kedron Young, true freshman, coming in for garbage time. He's going to be a player, man. 10 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. Notre Dame's rushing game right now is just so good. They finished with 265 rushing yards on the day. They're averaging 5.95 yards per carry. That is 6th in the country. This is one of the best ground attacks in the country, and now they have a passing game to go along with it. And you got to give some credit to the offensive line as well. Honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed in myself for taking so long to bring them up because I thought the offensive line had a great game. Billy Schrouth made his return to the lineup after missing the last several weeks due to an injury he suffered against Purdue, but he actually started at left guard instead of right guard, which is where he started the season. So Billy Schrouth replaced Sam Pendleton in the starting lineup. Rocco Spindler stayed there at right guard, has clearly done enough to show the coaching staff that he should keep his job. I thought he played pretty well in this one, so Notre Dame is a little bit more experienced there. On the interior, Sam Pendleton did get in late with the second team unit. He's young. He's only redshirt freshman, so I'm sure that this is disappointing for him now, but I thought the offensive line looked really good. Leonard was only sacked one time. It was a big sack in scoring territory, but the line only allowed 5 pressures all game. Leonard was kept clean for the vast majority of it. Steve Angeli took a sack pretty late in the game, but I honestly thought he could have done a little bit more to avoid that. Overall, I'm nitpicking now because that was such a strong performance. Mike Denbrock said it, man. Going to be a work in progress. We're seeing it live. Credit to him and everyone involved on the staff and all the players for continuing to put in the work because that was really fun to watch. And I think sometimes when you're watching an offense, the fun factor is real and the fun factor is legit now. This offense is really fun and they're clicking heading into the bye week. All right, coming up, Notre Dame's defense is somehow improving week to week despite all of the injuries that have piled up so far. That's next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And for your first $5 bet, I got a pick for you tonight. I'm going Steelers -5.5 against the Giants at home. It's Monday Night Football. It's going to be a big game down there in Pittsburgh. I do not really like the Steelers, but I think they're going to cover. I was really surprised with how good Russell Wilson looked once he took over for Justin Fields. So I think they're going to keep that rolling. Not only are they going to get the win, they're going to get the cover. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I think we've just reached the point now where Notre Dame's defense showing up is just an absolute certainty. Like, it's death, taxes, and the Notre Dame defense under Al Golden. They have just been that good this season and really last year as well. And outside of a couple busts that they gave up to Navy quarterback Blake Horvath, I thought they shut down what has been a really potent offense up to this point. And going into this game, I was a little bit worried about how Notre Dame's young linebackers would hold up against the triple option. You've got Kingston Viliamo-Asa, who's getting his first experience going against the option. Drake Bowen, same thing for him, even though he's a redshirt freshman. Shane Osbury, he played as well. And then you've got some young guys in the secondary too, like Leonard Moore. This is only, his third career start. And then Christian Gray, who's a true sophomore. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury too, so now he's going to be asked to tackle a lot more. But I think my concerns about the younger guys, I actually did not give enough credits to the veterans who have seen Navy, because Jack Kaiser and Jalen Sneed were outstanding in this one. They were tied for the team lead with 9 tackles each. Kaiser had a tackle for loss. Sneed had a half tackle for loss and a touchdown. He didn't have to do a whole lot to score that touchdown, right? Like, Blake Horvath just dropped the ball in the end zone, but Sneed was in the backfield prepared to make a play. That was Sneed's best performance of his career, and honestly, great for him, man, because I'm sure that this season, it probably hasn't always been easy, right? Like you're watching these young guys like a Jaden Osbury and a KVA play a little bit more than you. We talked about what happened after the game against Louisville where he came off the field before Notre Dame sang the alma mater, and he was clearly frustrated because he didn't play a whole lot in that game, and it felt like this year was finally ready to break out. And up to this point, it just hasn't happened. But Notre Dame really likes what Snead brings to the table against the triple option, and you saw why in this one. He had a bad mistake early on. I think he was in the wrong place on Blake Horvath's touchdown run, but then he figured it out, and he was all over the field, man. Like, his athleticism is such a factor in a game like this, and Notre Dame is going to need him again when they play Army later on in the year, so that's going to be another big game for him. But I also thought KVA, Drake Bowen, and Osbury played well too. Something about KVA and Drake Bowen, man, they are just violent hitters, and this defense as a whole is really violent, but man, when you watch KVA and Drake Bowen hit these guys, you feel bad for the ball carriers. And that flag on Kingston was so ridiculous, the roughing the passer penalty. And honestly, shout out to Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy for really going in on the ref. Like, what are you supposed to do? Because I know in the NFL, you're not supposed to land with your entire body weight on the quarterback. I get it. But this is college one, and that's an option quarterback. And KVA was like fighting off a block as it was happening. So like, I genuinely would love to have seen the ref give some sort of an explanation of what he was supposed to do in that situation to prevent a flag, because otherwise he would just have to let him go. And this is football. Eventually you're going to have to tackle the quarterback. And also, sometimes the quarterbacks that are in the booth, like, they might not always be the ones who are like on the defensive side, but Greg McElroy was like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Even though he's a quarterback, he actually felt sympathy for the defensive player there. But I love that Marcus Freeman kept him out there and was like, no, dude, keep going. And he made a play, I think, like right after that too. So that was a really good game for him and the linebackers as a whole. And another one of my keys to the game was dominate the interior. And Howard Cross did exactly that with the help of Riley Mills, in a nice game for Gabriel Rubio. He's finally getting back into football shape, so good for him. Cross and Rubio had 4 tackles each. Mills only had 1, but I thought he was pretty disruptive there in the middle. And when you've got guys like Cross and Mills and Rubio making things happen right there, right at the point of the attack, on the center and in the interior of that offensive line, especially going against the option, that makes life so much easier on everyone else in the Notre Dame defense, and that contributes to the turnovers. Like, yes, some of Navy's turnovers were just bad, right? Like, the muff punts obviously aren't a credit to the defense, but I think that Navy was rattled by Notre Dame's size, their speed, their length, and they were pressing a little bit, and they were trying to do things that they couldn't. Like, I thought it was very telling that on the broadcast they said that Navy has not fumbled this many times since they played Notre Dame back in 2019. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that when Navy, who is a very, very disciplined team, like 95% of the time, goes up against a team of the caliber of Notre Dame, they are more liable to make mistakes because it is just a different experience trying to run that operation, which cannot afford even the slightest mistake. When you go up against a team like Notre Dame, those mistakes are going to happen a lot more because that defense is just going to make you pay. They're going to make you think, and you're going to have to make quicker decisions. And then if you mess up at all, they are going to make you pay for it. So really good game collectively. Talked about the defensive line, talked about the linebackers. Let's talk about that secondary because Christian Gray had a slow start, but overall I thought he played pretty well. Like he had a couple bad plays early on. I thought maybe they could let up on that pass interference penalty, but then after watching the replays, I was like, yeah, that's probably a flag. And then you got Leonard Moore, who made his first career interception on a great play in the end zone. But to be honest with you, I actually thought that the play that Moore made to track down Blake Horvath was even bigger because, like, by that point in the game when Moore had that interception, the game was over. It was just like another note for the Notre Dame defense that this Navy offense, which had scored 100% of their red zone possessions, went 1 of 3 in this game. And Leonard Moore's interception was a great play. But early on in the game, first half, Notre Dame's up 28-7. Blake Horvath breaks open a big run. It looks like he has a good chance of scoring. Leonard Moore turns the Jets on, tracks him down, punches the ball. I thought for sure he was going to knock it out like he did against Louisville on Tyler Shuck. He doesn't knock the ball out, but he gets Horvath down. Then Navy was forced into kicking a field goal, which they missed, and they missed it in time for Notre Dame to get the ball back, drive down the field, and then they converted on a field goal. So in a play that could have ended up being a touchdown, or they could have just ultimately scored a touchdown on that drive to make it 28-14 or 28-10 had they made that field goal, they go into that half down 31-7 to Notre Dame because Moore never gave up on the play, ran down the field, and got to Horvath before he could score a touchdown. And that kind of effort, that kind of play, it might not seem like a big deal at the time, but now when you have hindsight, and you can look back on the game and think about all the different things that transpired. Would it have changed the outcome? No, but I think it was a big moment in the game that could have, just made things a little bit more interesting there. Maybe Navy comes out a little bit more ready to go because it's only a 2-touchdown game. Instead, Notre Dame's up 31-7, and that game is over. As for the safeties, Adon Schuler finished with 7 tackles, fumble recovery. I thought he should have scored on that one. It looks like he slowed down, was trying to wait for the linebacker or wait for the blockers to kind of sit up there. I feel like if Schuler had just sprinted as hard as he could and tried to cut back, he probably scores a touchdown there. Anyway, I'm nitpicking there. Xavier Watts, 5 tackles, pass breakup in this one. I thought he was going to get a pick on that third down. He didn't, but this defense just gets better and better no matter who is out there. And I've already mentioned the inexperience across the board, at linebacker, at cornerback. The fact that Notre Dame has a true sophomore and a true freshman at cornerback, and they just trust them out there on an island for the entire game. There are very few schools who can do that. Notre Dame is one of them, and it is just a testament to Mike Mickens and what he has built specifically in that cornerback room. And yeah, the 2 bust plays are frustrating. I don't want to completely just eliminate them from the equation here, but when you're playing Navy, they're going to empty the kitchen sink at you. And Horvath is also just a good athlete, so you got to give him credit there. It did kind of feel like Notre Dame's defense last year when they were pretty susceptible to giving up big explosive run plays, but they figured it out, and this defense is just clicking under Al Golden, and opposing teams just really don't know how to prepare for it. Drew Cronick says this hybrid triple option offense that has caused fits for everyone that they face. Al Golden had them just stymied there after those couple bust plays there early on, and they just were not ready for Notre Dame in any way. When you combine that speed and size, and then you also have the depth behind them, this defense feels like it's unstoppable. And you guys, with the fact that it's a third year under Al Golden, these players have a very clear understanding of the scheme and their assignment on every play. And when you add all of it together, it's just very hard to do anything. Look at Junior Tuialamaka, who is a third-string Viper at the beginning of the year. He played very well against Navy, and that just shows you the kind of depth they have on this unit and how many different options they have. They are getting better as the season goes on, and they're going to be tested again against Army and USC. Both of those offense could pose a threat to Notre Dame, but I have all the faith in this group that they're going to be ready to go, and when offenses play them, they feel it, man. This is a violent defense. I talked about the linebackers, but it is everyone, and they are a mean machine right now for opposing offenses. So hats off once again to this group. Another great performance. Now, with the win, Notre Dame is back in the top 10, and the rest of the college football world is kind of getting reintroduced to this team. So are the Irish going to get the respect they deserve? It's coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Whether it be sports, concerts, comedy shows, you name it, I love going to live events. And Gametime is a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And there are so many great sporting events going on right now. You've got college football and the NFL in full swing. The World Series are happening right now, plus the NHL and NBA. Their seasons just started up, so get off your couch and get to the game with Gametime. But personally, my favorite thing about the app is you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and then you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Game time. Something that we talked about all last week on the show was that this was going to be the first ranked matchup between Notre Dame and Navy since 2019. And prior to that, the last time that Notre Dame and Navy played when they were both ranked was 1978. So I always said it was the most important matchup between the two schools in decades. And then Notre Dame completely dominated that game. Navy is no longer ranked. I doubt they're going to be ranked again after that performance. And a lot of people are wondering, what are we supposed to make of that win? Because a lot of people were picking Navy. I work with one of them at Fox, Joel Klatt. I can't wait to give him a hard time for picking Navy to beat Notre Dame, only for the Irish to go out there and dominate in the way that they did. But something that happens is when you play Navy, even if you beat them, it's just one of the downsides of playing them. I talked about it when I shared my thoughts about the future of this rivalry and if they should continue playing every year. And for the record, I said I think they should play once every 3 years. But again, that's not the topic for today. What does a win over Navy mean? Because it is a ranked win. It's Marcus Freeman's 10th ranked win as a head coach. The fact that he already has 10 ranked wins in his first 3 years, that actually ties Frank Leahy for the fastest to get to 10 ranked wins. But can we just be honest with ourselves for a second? Navy's not very good. All right. They were terrible in the game, okay? They were god awful. So how do we evaluate this Notre Dame team? Because that ranked win is not going to be looked at the same as others. And I understand that people are going to be frustrated because there's fans who saw people pick Navy and they watch Notre Dame dominate them, and then they're going to watch people just like flip that around and be like, oh, well, it's just Navy. Well, like, it's hard for me to really get that upset with people when they say that, unless they pick Navy. Like, you can't do that if you pick Navy, but if you just kind of are a college football fan, you watch that game, like, we're not going to pretend like that Navy team is really good. And maybe they could make the college football playoff. I doubt it. I think they're probably going to lose again. They'll probably lose to Army. But theoretically, if they win the American Athletic Conference and they win the conference championship, they could be that group of 5 spot. But that's not really the point. The point is that Notre Dame absolutely handled Navy. That is a game that could have been tricky. That is a game that, if they overlooked it, that could have been a game in the fourth quarter. But it's really not Notre Dame's fault. They took care of their business. It's not their fault that Navy couldn't hold on to the ball. They had the fumbles, and which I said earlier, part of that is attributed to Notre Dame's defense, the size, the speed, the length, all that stuff. But you can't really give them much credit for like the muff punt returns, right? Or what about the kick that just drilled the dude? It looked like it hit him in the face, and then it went out of bounds. Like, this Navy team was so bad in this game. But it doesn't really matter for Notre Dame because, like I said, they took care of their business. I know that people are going to get upset that maybe it's not as big of a deal as we thought it could be, but it doesn't really matter because you know what happened on Saturday night? Texas A&M beat LSU at home in Kyle Field. That win is going to be one of the best wins of the college football season. There's a real chance that Texas A&M is going to have just one loss going in to their final regular season game of the year against Texas. That is going to be one of the biggest college football games of the year. If Texas A&M wins that game, they're going to be in the SEC championship. Right now, they're at the top of the conference. And there is a world where Notre Dame could have a road win over the SEC champion or maybe the SEC runner-up. And that is a great place to be. And I know that there's already we're starting to have some conversations should Texas A&M be ranked over Notre Dame? They were not ranked ahead of Notre Dame in the AP poll. I don't think they're going to be ranked ahead of Notre Dame in the first college football playoff rankings that come out, which come out on election night, which is kind of insane that ESPN decided to do that. But Notre Dame is going to be coming off a bye, so it will be interesting to see where they have Notre Dame. But just for all of us, let's just be real about the situation here. I absolutely think that Notre Dame should and will be ranked over Texas A&M. But when we have all these conversations about rankings, we have to admit that the NIU loss happened, and it somehow has to affect Notre Dame in the rankings. It's going to create some awkward dynamics in some of these polls. Like when people bring up that loss, Notre Dame doesn't really have a great argument against it. Again, I think Notre Dame will be ranked ahead of Texas A&M. I think they should be. If someone says that win doesn't look as good anymore, or that they should be ranked higher because now they're playing Marcel Reed, I think all of that is really just a load of crap. But really, though, it doesn't really matter because if Notre Dame goes 11-1, they are going to make the playoff. And that team that I just watched on Saturday is more than capable of finishing 11-1, and they could win every game left on their schedule by double digits. Honestly, they should. Even though USC is a rivalry game, it's on the road, and Army could be close. Notre Dame should beat every single team left on their regular season schedule by double digits. If they do that, they are in the playoff. And then all this talk about rankings and all that stuff, it doesn't really matter anymore in the 12-team playoff format. I'll admit, I used to get really bothered by what national pundits said about Notre Dame. Really irked me if I felt like they were being disrespected. And I still do get annoyed sometimes when I see it, but maybe it's just getting older, a little bit more maturity, I would hope. I just don't really care because it doesn't really matter as much in the 12-team playoff because if Notre Dame gets in, they're going to have the opportunity to earn that respect back on the field. Those rankings, the AP, the AP hasn't really mattered in a while ever since the college football playoff, but none of that stuff really matters. As long as Notre Dame gets a fair shot, they get the right seed, then they are going to have the opportunity to make up for that loss against NIU because they still don't have any benefit of the doubt right now because of that, and a win over Navy isn't going to make that go away, nor should it. Even though it's a little bit frustrating, we hope that they get a little bit more respect because it's a ranked win. Navy just played so bad that they're just not going to get as much credit for that one. I'm not even trying to discredit the win. I'm just being honest about the situation because that was just such a bad performance. I could not believe how undisciplined Navy was and just how bad they looked. And anyone watching that game could say, wow, two things can be true. Notre Dame looked really good. It was a really impressive win because of how good they looked on offense. But when you look at what Navy did when they had the ball and all the turnovers they had, it's just like, wow, okay. So we got to forget about Navy here for a little bit. But my point is this team is hot. And they've got 4 games left. They're going to be favored in every one. I'm not penciling them into the playoff because I made that mistake early on in the season, and then they lost to NIU, but I'm starting to believe in this team more than I have since that fateful day against the Huskies in the home opener. And that's really what I'm trying to get at here. Like all this discussion, all this conversation from the media about what Notre Dame is and what they aren't doesn't really matter because this team is rolling. They look really good right now. If they keep that up, they finished 11-1. None of that outside noise is going to matter because they're going to be in the college football playoff and they're going to have the chance to prove to everyone that this team is legit, that loss was a fluke, and that all of the preseason hype and expectations we had about this team going into the season was right, and they just had one bad day. But outside of that, they were a much, much better team with one of the best wins of the college football season so far and a chance to really just finish the season strong, get in the playoff, and actually do some damage once they get there. And that team that I watched on Saturday looks like one that is absolutely capable of doing some damage. So ignore the noise for now. None of it really matters. What matters is what the team showed on Saturday, and they showed that they can be a really, really good football team. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Even though we've got another bye week coming up, I'm going to release a new episode every morning through Friday. We got Luke Smith coming on tomorrow for our final thoughts on the win over Navy. Then I'm going to have some more guests on later in the week to talk recruiting, the season as a whole, plus some other fun stuff that I've got in store. So make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and I will see you on Tuesday.